I've owned my Jayco Pinnacle for almost 6 months now, and as you probably know, anytime you buy a brand new RV, you're going to have issues and problems, especially in the first year of ownership. Really the first few months as everything is put through the test. So I figured it'd be helpful for the sake of expectations to share some of the issues and problems I've encountered here in my Pinnacle during my initial ownership. Now, just to be clear, regardless of which brand RV you buy, you're going to encounter problems during that initial ownership period. This is not a video to bash Jayco. In fact, this is my 5th RV, and with each one, I found generally the first 6 months or so, I spend kind of working through the problems and issues, and then I'm in pretty good shape moving forward. But I still think it's helpful to talk about these issues, especially if you're in the market for a Pinnacle or even a North Point, so you kind of know what to expect going into it. Now, if you haven't seen the full tour and review of my 2021 Jayco Pinnacle 37MDQS, definitely check it out. I'll put a link up above for it. It kind of sets the context for today's video and some of the other videos in the series. All right, so with that, let's kick off the rundown, and I'll start by talking about loose trim, and that's probably one of the most common things you're going to find with the new RV. It's really minor, but I'll just show you what we're dealing with. So on this little piece of trim here on the slide box on the floor, about a week or so after I got it back home, I noticed that there was a little crack here, and this whole piece of trim, it's just an L-shaped piece of trim, was separating at that crack, and so it was pulling off. And basically, I think it must have gotten caught maybe on something at some point during manufacturing, or maybe even after that, and it kind of split the trim. And so I'm not sure if you can see that in video, but I just had to put some carpenter glue back behind this lip here, and then brad nail it in again, and then just fill in the crack, with some filler there and some stain. You can't even tell, unless you're up really close, that it cracked right there, but super minor issue to fix. And while we're talking about trim, I'll just point out 2 more really minor issues up here in the bathroom. And the first one's going to be on the trim, the casing kind of surrounding this pocket door. This piece right down here was loose, and again, I just put some glue behind it, brad nailed it in there. It's been good to go ever since. And then kind of similar story up here on the ceiling in the bathroom. This vinyl piece of trim that joins these 2 ceiling panels was coming down. And so again, just putting some glue up in there and some brad nails, pretty simple to fix. And that's, by the way, kind of my preferred way to fix trim that's loose, because the brad nails, they can kind of wiggle out with all the vibrations. So I find putting some glue up in there, in addition to the brad nails, that seems to really be a more permanent fix. Another minor issue we noticed is that the TV was mounted crooked. And so when the TV's up, you noticed up here at the top, the gap of light from the window behind was greater on one side compared to the other. And this one was really easy to fix, actually. All I had to do was adjust the track kind of that goes up with that elevator there. So you can see basically it has this bracket that's mounted with 2 screws underneath here. All I had to do is loosen it up, slide it over about maybe a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and straighten everything out. And now it's perfectly centered, goes up and down, no issues. So we are now in the bathroom looking at a close-up of the base of the toilet, and I discovered there was a missing little plastic acorn nut cap on one side. And so this side was missing it. The other one had the little cap on there, and you can see it's purely cosmetic. It just covers up that bolt that runs down to the flange to hold the toilet on. And so I did have to reach out to Jayco on this one. Normally I'd just go to Amazon and try to find the part, but it was so specialty I could not find it anywhere. And surprisingly, when I reached out to Jayco Parts, they helped me identify the part, but then they refused to actually send me the part. They explained that I had to go through a dealer. I even shared with them that my dealer was 7+ hours away, and they insisted that I go through the dealer. So I did eventually get the part. It took about 2 months, believe it or not, to get this little acorn nut cap. Really small deal, but I was kind of surprised that Jayco wouldn't send me the part direct. Next issue I'll bring up is really more of a nuisance than anything else, but I noticed every time I ran the air conditioner up here in the bedroom, the second AC, I would hear this whistling noise coming from the returns or the registers. And I just assumed initially it was probably some sawdust or some debris that was stuck in the ducts. Anytime you get a new RV, the first month or so, you get all this sawdust that blows out of the registers from the manufacturing. But it persisted, several months in. And so I could not figure out where it was coming from. I just knew it was somewhere in the registers. And I kind of heard it here in the bedroom, and then also going into the bathroom, I could kind of hear it through the register in here. So I knew it had to be kind of somewhere in between. So finally I put a scope in there, kind of a flexible scope that I could send down there, a camera, and then look at it on my phone and see what was going on. And I discovered there was a stray piece of plastic bag that was stuck in the register about right here in this vicinity. And it basically looked like where two ducts came together, they kind of telescope into one another. And it was like a little piece of plastic got stuck right where the two ducts come together. And it was kind of just, you know, flapping in the duct. And I'll throw a picture up of what it looked like on the scope. But it was a pain to get rid of because I couldn't reach it. It was right between the register here and the return. And so I actually had to go on the roof, remove the air conditioner, and then stick my hand. It just barely reached enough where I could pull that stray piece of plastic out and free it. Once I got rid of it, oh man, so much better. Didn't have that whistling sound anymore. I did encounter a small leak in the bathroom and the shower, which, by the way, I think this shower is one of the best looking right now in a production fifth wheel. But the leak was really small, and I'll tell you what I think is going on. So this shower has a single three-sided wall panel, right? So this wall, and the other wall, this is all one piece. And then you've got this shower base here, which is a separate piece. And on the shower base, it's got a lip that goes behind here and goes up probably about an inch or so that water running down this wall, even if there's no silicone here, there's no chance of water getting up behind the wall, you know, and ruining what's behind the shower wall, right? So that lip, as far as I know, is on three sides of this shower base here. So it's on this side, there's a lip going all the way around, and then it's on this wall, a lip going all the way around, and then it's got a lip going all the way around on this. However, you know, think about it, this shower base is just a typical shower base. And usually when you have a base like this, it goes in between three walls. And then this whole wall here is open with a door for you to get into. However, the way that Jayco's installed it here, they've added this knee wall, which is great, absolutely love it. But I do not believe there is a lip connected to the base that runs behind this whole wall right here. So what that means is Jayco has to do a really good job flashing this with silicone to make sure no water could potentially run down and then get behind this wallboard. So what I noticed is we would take showers and then we would have this little puddle of water over here in the master bedroom, kind of right down here on the floor. And so I kept trying to figure out where is that coming from. And of course it always coincided to taking showers. And what I discovered is back here in the shower, all the way against this knee wall here in the corner, some water must have been kind of migrating down this wall and getting through a very, very small crack here, perhaps, where the silicone had failed. And I think what's going on, because when I fixed it, I kind of had the same problem, is, you know, this piece of glass goes all the way back pretty much tight. I mean, there's probably about maybe 3/16 of an inch right here. So I think what happened is someone did silicone it at the factory, but then this piece of glass kind of shoved up against it, kind of mushed that silicone and kind of caused it to prematurely fail because it no longer was sealing the way that the installer put the silicone there. It kind of mushed the silicone and lifted it up. So the solution was to obviously rip out all that silicone and then make sure the silicone was pushed in all the way into that corner down there. And doing that, since I have not had issues with anything leaking. So if you're going to buy a Pinnacle, just make sure you do double check the silicone down here, because things can shift. And you know, sometimes you do it right and it looks good and then it dries funny or just doesn't dry the way you expected it to. So that was just a real small issue that I had, but it has to do with this shower base not having a lip on this knee wall. And the rest of the issues are going to be on the outside. So first one I'll show you is here up in the front storage. And I noticed immediately when opening this access panel here, the entire BM Pro node here, where everything comes together, had tipped over. And basically what happened is, you can see on the bottom there, they've got screws going into it, and the screws were a little bit on the short side. And so it caused that whole node to kind of tilt forward. So that was solved easily just by putting some longer screws in there to secure it. Next issue I'll point out is up here on the roof. So I am standing on the rear ladder, which is on the rear back left corner, and I'm looking forward to the front of the fifth wheel to kind of give you a vantage point. But back here next to the ladder, you know, I spent a lot of time making different adjustments up here on the roof, and I noticed every time I got off the ladder, if I put any weight right here, I could almost hear kind of splitting, cracking sounds. And there's this real soft spot on the roof right here. I'm not sure what's going on with the plywood. If maybe it had like an imperfection, or there's a knot, or just something going on here. The roof itself is flawless. There's no imperfections, but it almost looks like, you know, something hit it and just did a little bit of damage to the plywood underneath. And for whatever reason, it was left on the unit. So I'm probably just gonna leave this one. You know, I know about it, so I know not to put pressure there. I think the only way to fix it really would be to take off this roof and peel it all the way back and then replace the plywood underneath. So I might just leave it for now, but we'll see. Next issue I'll talk about is the underbelly, and this one actually surprised me given the Pinnacle's price point. But when I got up under here first, I noticed there were huge gaps and cracks, especially along this I-beam here. And basically the way Jayco does it is they let this corrugated plastic rest on top of the I-beam, but as the corrugated plastic wants to kind of bow and bend toward the middle, it makes a huge gap along here at the I-beam where it connects. And so I'm talking huge gaps where large mice would easily fit through, you know, other critters, and not to mention air escape. So I was able to remedy that by going back and adding, it took me I think about 3 or 4 cans of black expanding foam to go up in there. But then what really improved it is this zip sheathing tape right here. And this is basically soft flashing that they use on houses. I actually did a full another video on that, so I'll put a link up for that. But this zip tape is just a game changer. I mean, it seals up the underbelly completely such that now when you're heating that space in the winter, you know, trying to keep things from freezing, that heat stays up here in the underbelly a lot longer. And I mean, there's that zero chance that a mouse or other critter could crawl up into this underbelly now. Another minor issue outside are these baggage compartment doors, and I've noticed that they aren't aligned very well. So if you're looking at this gap here, the size of this gap going all the way, you'll see it starts to get really narrow down here, which means it's not quite squared up. And then it starts to get really, really big. And then over here on this side, it gets really big, so big that at nighttime, if there's a light on here in the storage bay, you can actually see light bleeding out. And so that means air is escaping, obviously, which is not good, especially in the colder months, but also something could potentially, you know, crawl in there, bugs perhaps. So that's something I have not fixed yet. It involves loosening up these set screws up at the top and then kind of finagling with it to slide it over, and hopefully I can get it to seal up a little bit better. But I've noticed the same thing on the other side. So it's actually 2 doors on my unit here. Same thing over here. In fact, it's so tight down here in this bottom corner, you can see it's basically kissing, that when I shut this outside kitchen baggage door, I kind of have to pull it, kind of torque it to one side. Otherwise it kind of runs into the frame right there. So that's something definitely I noticed from day one, that they could do a little bit better job with the PDI there in the factory. And last issue I'll report has to do with the Onan generator, which I had installed at the factory, which, by the way, I think Jayco probably outsources that to Onan or some other vendor that installs the generators for them. But notice these exhaust hangers right here that basically hang the exhaust. Notice how this one looks in really good condition, and then come down and take a look at this one over here, and you can see it is, you know, cracking, and it looks like it's probably not going to last too long. So again, this is only about 6 months old, and this one is original. This one I've replaced. So just notice how much beefier and thicker, and just looks a lot more softer, like the compound in this hanger is going to hold up a lot better. And basically what happened is the hanger that was there from the factory, it just kind of corroded and got really brittle and basically fell off, and so it was no longer supported here. So I found these straps. It's actually an aftermarket version. I had to kind of tweak a little bit how it's mounted here, but this I think will hold up a lot better. I bought a second one to replace this one over here, but have not had a chance to install it yet. And when I Googled this problem, it seems like it's a pretty common problem. People are complaining a lot about the material, the compound here on these hangers, that it's just too brittle and it doesn't hold up very well. You know, maybe the sun bakes it or whatnot, but I think that's something that probably falls more on Onan or their supplier or vendor that supplies these hangers. So just something to be on the alert for if you've got an Onan generator. And folks, that's really all the problems and issues that I've encountered here on my Jayco Pinnacle. Now you might be watching this and you're thinking, wow, how did all those issues slip through, you know, Jayco during PDI after the manufacturing of the factory, right? Or you might be watching saying, hey man, you haven't seen anything yet. Wait till you hear what's happened to me on my fifth wheel. And I'd love to hear that, obviously, in the comments below. But let me just say this. This is my 5th RV, and when I compare and think about the number of issues, the severity of issues that I've encountered here on my Pinnacle, I would say, just being completely transparent, it's probably slightly better than average compared to some of the other brands that I've owned. And I've owned several from under the Forest River umbrella, and then even one from Grand Design. And so that's just my candid feedback here on my Pinnacle. Now, let me bring up one other thing, and that is my unit was ordered January 2021, and then it came off the production line and was finished in June of 2021. And so that was, arguably in the height of the pandemic. And I remember being a little bit concerned because there's a lot of media reports out there in the news about, RV quality is just tanked, and dealers are complaining that the quality is the worst they've seen in 30 years and whatnot. But I just don't think that's true. I think that's really just the media kind of running with the storyline that they know people are going to want to click on and read. I found here in my Jayco Pinnacle that like I said, the severity and the number of issues I think is really slightly better than some of the other brands that I've owned in the past that were built long before the pandemic started. So I say all that because if you're on the fence and you're thinking about buying an RV in today's market and you've read some of those stories in the news and you're thinking, should I avoid buying an RV for the next couple years till all these, issues are ironed out? I really think those things are probably isolated. Maybe there are some brands that are really struggling to put out a quality product, but I just don't see it when I look overall at the quality and the way that my Pinnacle is put together. Yeah, there are issues like you saw today, like any other RV, right? But I just don't see there's some, real huge trend and drop in quality overall. And folks, no one is paying me to say this. This is not sponsored by Jayco. I have no affiliation whatsoever with them, but I did want to encourage you, if you're on the fence and you're looking at a Pinnacle or a North Point or really any other Jayco product, just to know that this is my experience firsthand. I promise to always share the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just be transparent about it all. So in summary, there's always room for improvement, and the same goes for Jayco. I think the biggest change that I'd like to see is just with their warranty and parts department, that they'd be willing to send parts, especially small parts, directly to the customer. I think it just doesn't make a lot of sense to force a customer to go through the dealer and just all the drama that's involved there a lot of times, just for the sake of efficiency and respecting the customer's time, just to send those parts directly to the customer. But that's something they can easily fix and make adjustments to their process. And in the end, if I had to make the decision all over again, I would still settle on the Jayco Pinnacle. So no regrets there. Well, I think that's about it for today's video. I will be doing some new videos soon here in the Pinnacle series. One's going to be likes and dislikes on the Pinnacle, and then another will be what Jayco does differently, what kind of sets Jayco apart in terms of manufacturing and features, specifically on the Pinnacle, but it also will apply a lot to the North Point and some of their other models. So if you're not subscribed already, click that subscribe button. But as always, thanks for watching.